I want to welcome you all here tonight. Say hi. Hi. Thank you. Thanks for coming to this program. I don't even know what program number it is because these days, this year, I'm on the road every 7 to 10 days for this entire year doing a program somewhere in the United States. And so I do want to just welcome you. And for those who don't know, hi, somebody said tonight, there's only one Stu. There he is back there. Thank you. All right, so yes, my name is Stuart Schlossman. I too have multiple sclerosis. That's what prompted me to get started with all this because it wasn't there when I was diagnosed years ago, and I wanted to provide this to you. Tonight, we are funded, when I say funded, we were given a grant by Teva Neuroscience to do this program tonight. We cannot do our programs without the income that we get from the pharmaceutical industry, and I hope that you all can thank them as well. Thank Teva Neuroscience for doing this tonight. Thank you. You know, we recently were given a blessing come our way. I mean, MS Views and News is trying to find ways to expand, and we did a gala a few weeks ago in Fort Lauderdale, and attending that gala that we heard just a few days prior was Miss Teen Broward. She and her mentor decided to come to our program, and then during that fundraiser, she was telling me that her platform now, until she goes for Miss Florida, is MS Views and News. Okay, that is huge. Okay, she is going to be doing things with children that either have MS or whose parents have MS. She has taken on another child that does fundraising for us during the course of the year. She and he are going to start doing fundraising events for MS Views and News. She is creating a website that she will work with our tech people on tying into our website. She is coming up with this whole design of the things that she wants to do. Her name is Michelle Luce, and she is Miss Teen Broward, okay? And, you know, thank you. And thank you. And, you know, this is really, really big because everywhere she goes now and the media follows her, our logo has to follow her too. So it is great public awareness. I am very thankful that she, her parents, and her mentor wanted to do this for MS Views and News. And so you're going to be seeing a lot of her. We're going to bring her around the state. Maybe we'll get her to the Tampa area sometime next year because that's exactly what she wants you all to see, is what she is doing and why she is doing it. Okay? Great. Now, I don't want to take up more time. We got a lot to do tonight. We have two speakers tonight. One is Jeff Segal, and he's a personal trainer. And Jeff does a lot of programs with us in the state of Florida and is now traveling with us outside the state of Florida to do programs because when he's not working with us, showing you all how to combat spasticity, he comes here and he speaks with you all about healthy nutrition and how you can do better for yourselves with MS and how it, you know, just how to have more energy during the course of the day will come from what he teaches you of or speaks with you about concerning nutrition. Then following Jeff, we're going to do a quick Q&A. Following his talk, we're going to do a quick Q&A. And then following that, we're going to have Dr. Gandhi, who I'm sure that all of you are here for tonight. Dr. Gandhi and Jeff. I know you're here for Jeff too, right? I don't want to hurt him. His feelings get hurt bad. He cries to me a lot. So anyway, Dr. Gandhi will be here, and Dr. Gandhi is going to speak with you about the effective communication that you could have with your healthcare team. He'll speak with you about some of the medications, and then we'll do a Q&A with him as well. If you are not comfortable asking you a question because you're afraid of these cameras, just know that you're in a great state. You could speak like Minnie or Mickey Mouse. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. We'll see you more later on. Come on, Jeff. Thank you for coming tonight.
Well, thank you guys for coming. How many of you guys have heard me speak before? Okay, don't give the secrets away. I'm a firm believer in getting more out of life by doing more, and the more you do, the more you're able to do, and the more enjoyable times you'll have. So, how many people in here were never a child? All right, I saw someone raising their hand in the back. We'll talk later. I've been working with people with MS for 15 plus years. I've been working with people who don't have MS for a lot longer than that, but since I was diagnosed with MS, I decided to go into research and learn what I can do for others as well as myself, but I was the guinea pig. I was always the guinea pig before I worked with anybody else because, I'd rather hurt myself than hurt someone else and figure the ins and outs. And there wasn't a lot of research on exercise and MS available when I was diagnosed in '98. So currently I'm doing a lot of research myself, and I would love to present some of the research I'm doing. Today is not the day, but exercise can help the secondary symptoms that you get from MS, strength, mobility, all those types of things. If you do work out, lift weights, aerobic activity, you can slow down some of the things that maybe MS is causing, but by knowing you have MS and by being a little more careful and by doing a little bit less, you're actually doing a little more harm for yourself, because then you're unable to do the things that you used to be able to do, and you wish you can do them, and now you're at a program wondering why you can't do it, and hopefully at the end of this program you'll do a little bit more, if not a lot more. So this is my thank you to you guys. I don't want you to think this program is about me, because this program is all about you. When you give your time to somebody, you're giving a part of your life to them, and what you guys are all doing is giving a part of your life to me, because I'm allowed to stand up here and borrow some of your life, and hopefully you go home with a little bit more than you came with. But I really appreciate these programs and the people who come to the programs, because they just don't work without the attendees. And I am so happy to see that we have a full room. And you can't get back time. That's one thing you can't get back no matter what. So plan wisely, and that'll come into my program in a little bit. Now, one thing that's so important is staying positive. It's a very difficult thing for some at times, is to stay positive, especially if you have a debilitating disease like MS. How do you stay positive? You look at the bright side of things, not the dark side of things. I was traveling up to the Northeast. This was, I guess, in, what year was that? 2012? And this was a headline that I was reading while I was flying up to, I think it was Connecticut, to give a talk. And I read this: 2 in 5 doctors shun Medicaid patients. And all I could think was, wow, that's phenomenal. 3 out of 5 doctors are going to take Medicaid. That's pretty good for people who are on Medicaid. But if you read the whole article, it's talking about how bad it is. Good news doesn't sell, right? Bad news is what people read. It's the catchy stuff. So by putting that as a title, as the headline, 2 in 5 doctors shun Medicaid, we're all scared. Oh my gosh. Well, look at it. Always look at the other side and the bright side of things, and you will have a happier life. Trust me. And if you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is you turn the news on, you're bound to have a rough day, because good news in the morning is rare to find. It's probably more likely to be found in a cartoon. Actually, cartoons are pretty rough, aren't they? I remember, the Roadrunner. That Roadrunner's been chased for years. I don't know how many years he's been chased, but he's going to get caught. The MS diet. How many people in here knows what the MS diet is? You guys are all in the right place. The MS diet is something that we hope for, we wish for, but there's no specific diet that helps MS disease or modify the way the disease course is, unless you're eating the wrong foods, unless you're eating a poor diet. Now, one of the things that I really want to drive home is, when you go to your neurologist, what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about MS, right? If you don't, then you might be in the wrong room. If you have cardiovascular disease, diabetes, you name it, anything that's diet related, and you're on other meds and you're on all these other types of programs, and you go to the doctor, what are you going to talk about? You're going to tell them, well, guess what? I've got a problem with my heart, I got a problem with my lungs, I've got orthopedic issues, I got this, that, and the other. And by the end of the appointment, oh yeah, let's talk about MS. Well, we're out of time. So, not just for the sake of your doctor's appointment, but for the sake of your own health, take good care of yourself. Eat well. If you know something is not a good food or nutritious, limit the amount of it that you eat. I don't say to completely take it away, because that's taking something from you. Think about it as safe toys and unsafe toys. If a child wants toys, they're going to have a bunch of toys. There are some toys that aren't as safe as others, but they get to play with all of them. You just, as a parent, you don't want them playing with the dangerous ones. And dangerous ones meaning like the toys that are high in fat. Now this is basically what our society boils down to. That, people want the biggest, the most, what restaurant can stay open with small portions? Only a very, 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 very fine dining restaurant, right? With the best chef in the world that's going to give you a small portion, which is probably the amount that you should eat. As we grow up and as from day one until probably the middle or end of high school, when you get out of high school, what do? You eat every 3 to 4 hours, and I'll get into that, but your day is consumed with activities followed by food, followed by activities, followed by food, followed by activities, followed by food, followed by sleep, right? That's how your day goes. And it's what you do in between that takes up the time, which is usually about 3 to 4 hours. These are lists of diets that are out there. I don't believe in diets. I don't believe in diets with names. Doesn't mean you can't pick a diet with a name, but if a diet has a name, what does that mean? That means that you're going to follow that diet until a certain point. What's your goal? What's the biggest goal when you're trying to change your diet? Someone raise your hand and tell me, what's the biggest goal in dieting? Lose weight. Okay, so when you're on a diet and people have unrealistic goals, right? If I ask somebody, what's your goal with your diet? Oh, I want to lose 40 pounds. No, you want to lose 1 pound. And now you're down to, on the side, 39 pounds, but 1 pound at a time. But if you go on a diet and say you want to lose 10 pounds, or it really should be more about waist size, but if you go on a diet and you achieve the goal of what you went on the diet for, then what happens? You get off the diet and you refeed, you go back to the way you were. Hopefully what you can do is stick with a new way of eating, a new lifestyle. Food's got to be something you like and something you enjoy. And if you eat the right amount at the right time, it'll work out. The 3 questions that I like to ask when you're going on the dieting is what, when, and how much. That pretty much answers it all. If you can figure it out, you're in really, really, really good shape. So when you're, let's say, we'll start at infancy. How many mothers do we have in here? Okay. How often did your children eat? You fed them, whether you breastfed or bottle fed with formula. The answer is when they start crying, right? That's how often. But really about every 3 to 4 hours, and then you have, they eat, then they nap, then they wake up, they cry. I'm a dad, I understand how it is. But every 3 to 4 hours you eat. When it's time to go to school, same thing happens. The best thing that you can do is learn healthy eating habits earliest you possibly can in life. So if you have children, now's the time to teach them to eat well and let them learn so that way they can grow up with a healthy habit and understand this is a child here that's really has a healthy table of food in front of him. Hopefully he picked it out, but he's doing a good job. Now, what do all kids want to do? You want to play, right? You want to play and you want to do things that your parents don't know about. But my parents always found out. I just didn't know until I grew up and they told me all the stuff that I was doing that they knew I was doing, and I wasn't as sneaky as I thought. But running around, playing, doing all that stuff, that makes us who we are. It builds our personalities. And how many people here think that you should, that as humans we gain weight with age? Okay, raise your hand if you believe that. That number of years you're alive correlates to weight gain. You know what correlates to weight gain? Slower metabolism. You know what helps your metabolism? More activity. Eating more often, but less amounts of food. So as children, think about how much activity you did as a child. And if you want to think about how thin you were as a child, or go back and look at some pictures, you were active. You were active in school. You were active after school. I can't tell you how many times I thought my mother was going to grab me by the ear and tell me to come eat dinner when they were yelling for me, because that was the only thing to get us off the fields of playing outside. That's what kids did. We rode our bikes, we played sports. Whatever season in my neighborhood it was, is the sport that we played. And we played it until we got called inside. And everybody's had a different time, so you'd hear the mothers yelling for all the kids out there, and everyone would just stare at that one person, and he'd have to run home. But staying active and eating well is what dictates your weight. So if you space your foods out and have breakfast or no breakfast and just dinner, and you're not active and you're sitting behind a desk all day or laying on the bed watching television, your metabolism's going to slow down and you're going to gain weight, and it's going to be harder to lose your weight, and it's probably going to be right around here. And it's a lot easier and faster to lose weight than it is to gain weight. Did you hear that? It's a lot faster to lose weight than it is to gain weight, because if you think about how much you weighed at the age of 15 and how much you weigh now, how many years did it take for that to happen? And you want to what? Get that off in 3 weeks? It's not happening unless you get a saw and start chopping off your leg. So children play, they're active, they're adventurous, they do stuff that's fun that you guys probably don't do but should. If we were doing this, we'd probably be laughed at, or who knows. But not them, they're having a great time. And what responsibilities did we have? And this is going to make sense, because as children, what do? We had to go to school, we had to behave, we had to do homework, and we didn't like the homework part, but we had to do it. And it wasn't that big of a deal, and we were told what to do. It wasn't a choice. You know, we could choose not to do it and get in trouble, but that doesn't last very long. And then eventually you get into college and the classroom gets bigger, and what happens? You start to forget about all the things that you learned up until that time, and you skip breakfast. You might be hungover and go to and do whatever you can just to make it to your first class, if you go to your first class, and who knows when the first meal you're going to eat is. And the reason it's called breakfast is because you're breaking fast. You don't need energy or calories to go to sleep at night. So if you eat a huge meal just before you go to sleep, unless you're a sleeping runner, it's not going to do you well. It's going to sit, and it's going to digest, and it's going to turn to fat. Because all nutrients, all macronutrients that you eat, if you don't utilize them properly and burn them off, they all turn to fat, except for fat. Fat stays as fat. There's a simple equation. You eat fat, it stays as fat. Then what happens? We get into the next part of our life is getting stressful, because you're either getting out of college or getting into work, and stress is something that leads to changes in your eating habits. So some people don't eat when they're stressed. Some people just eat when they're stressed. And some people just skip lunch, do whatever they can because they're working. They're too busy. They forget about what's important, because work isn't as important as health. I mean, I can tell a lot of you in here today would trade work for health any day. And then comes the stress, the major stress. And what happens after stress is, well, I want to throw a little funny out there. This guy's getting good at stress management, a little too good at it. But when you're really, 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 really stressed out, you end up eating foods that are, not as good for you. And if you skip a meal, how many of you have skipped breakfast and maybe had lunch a little bit too late, or didn't plan what you were going to have for lunch? What do? You find yourself at a drive-thru because you get so hungry you want to eat everything that's the tastiest, largest portion, and you end up eating it twice as fast as you're supposed to eat. And when you're done eating, you're still hungry because your brain hasn't caught up with your stomach and you eat more. So some of the things that I've learned to curb your eating is A, eat a little bit slower. B, the most important nutrient we have out there, water. Drink a lot of water. You can live a lot longer without food than you can without water. If you don't believe me, watch Naked and Afraid. But what happens is we want to eat everything that's tasty, and the more tasty, the more sugars, the more fats, the more salt. That's what goes into foods. That's what our palate wants. And we crave it, we eat it, we overindulge in it, and then what happens? If you're at a family dinner and you're doing it, or if you're at a drive-thru, the same thing. Once you take that deep breath and lean back, it's all over. Because the only thing you got left is unbuttoning that button at the top so you can eat more. Then you're really in trouble. We end up falling back onto comfort foods. How many people in here know what comfort foods are? You know, when you're stressed out and there's that one food that maybe you ate with your grandparents or your parents made them for you, or you just like that food and you fall back on it, it's fine. It's a behavioral thing. Eating is a behavioral thing. You know, if you can identify some of the things that I've done with my clients, which has been very helpful, is I make them keep a food journal. If you don't write it, you don't bite it. There were times that I was so busy that I wouldn't take anybody until they gave me their 3-day journal. And if I came back to them, they didn't give me a 3-day journal, I figured, you know what, they're not into it. I'm not going to work with them, because if you can't keep track of what you're going to eat for 3 days, how are you going to keep up with the exercise load that I'm going to give you? It goes hand in hand, diet and exercise. They're the same, you know. You got to eat, you got to burn it off, or you're going to need to diet more. But your diet should include an exercise regimen. And how many people in here are from another country? Do you think of the country where you're from? Do you think back of the foods that were there and how great they were? Okay, well, if we took everybody in this room and we took them to another country for a few years, they would start thinking the same thing, because our childhood is when you're thinking back to and how happy you were and all the stuff that went on. It may or may not be better food, but your memory of it is, and that becomes your comfort food. Right? Isn't that, don't you feel good when you eat the foods that you had when you were a child, or if you remember what your mother's, your favorite meal your mother made was? That's a comfort food. How many people in here know how to read the food label? Okay, are you sure? I hope you're right on that. But in the food label, to me, the most important thing is, well, total calories. You look at the total calories, and then you look up above that and you see, wait a second, is this something that I'm going to eat the whole box of? Because if I do, then that's not the total calories, and the total are different by portion size. So you're going to have twice as many calories as you thought you were going to have. And that's a big problem. I mean, you're eating more than one portion size whenever you go out to eat. Because what I said originally was the restaurants would end up closing if they didn't give you enough food. So if you're out to eat and you don't want to eat all the food, get a to-go box when you get there. Put it in a to-go box, bring it home. It might be a snack or lunch tomorrow. Then you look at the macronutrients. So you see there's 12 grams of fat there. 12 grams of fat would mean that you got to be careful with it. Because there's 9 calories per gram of fat. And compared to carbohydrates and proteins, who only have 4 grams, fat takes up a lot more space than protein. Protein in our body exists as muscle. So you wonder, you know, BMI, anybody familiar with what BMI is? BMI was originally intended to check on populations more so than individuals. What's important is body fat percentage and how much lean body mass you have. But they did it with populations, and it was more intended to measure people who were malnourished. And now it's the opposite. Now they're checking BMIs, and it's not fair to someone who's really fit and really muscular to tell them that, well, your BMI is a 30, you're obese. Because how many people remember how muscular Mike Tyson was when he was fighting? Or you pick any athlete that looks ripped as could be, their body fat percentage could be anywhere between 5 and 10%. And if you measure their height versus their weight, they're clinically obese. It's not the case because that screws up the whole system, and that's why it's meant for populations. And then you look at sodium here. You don't want to have a lot of sodium because sodium will make you retain water, and sodium's not good for your heart and blood pressure, especially if you have blood pressure issues. So you got any questions about the food label before I skip to something else? You guys are good with it? You guys are eating. You don't care about the food label right now, do you? But percentages are based on daily values, not on the particular food. It's for the whole day, not for that meal. Now, originally we started out with the food pyramid. It was really confusing. They kept changing it. They added exercise to it. They added all kinds of different things to the food pyramid. Sometimes the good stuff was at the top, sometimes it was at the bottom. And I understood it because it was what I studied. But whenever I tried to explain it to somebody else, I really lost them. Now they got the food plate. The most important thing about your food plate is having a variety of foods with a variety of colors. The more colorful your foods are, the better off you are because you got more micronutrients in there and vitamins and minerals, as long as the food colors are not Skittles. You want to make sure that they're whole foods and good foods. But this is a lot easier to understand. And the take home is not only to have a variety of foods, but you can eat just about anything, just not in excess. You don't want to have a whole plate of fattening foods, stuff that's high in fat. But you can have some fattening foods. You need fat. What are we here for? We have MS. What's getting destroyed in our body? Yeah, the fat around the nerves. So you do need to have fat in your diet, and there has to be fat in your body. And it's our last source of energy. And that's basically what food is energy. So when people say, what do I need? When someone tells me they're lacking energy, I'm thinking, well, maybe you should eat. But I understand what you're saying. You have fatigue. And fatigue and energy are two somewhat different things. By definition. Energy, by definition, is measured by calories and activity. When you're talking about energy that you have, one of the biggest causes of fatigue is being deconditioned. And that's another thing that happens with MS is you get deconditioned because you may have lost a couple of abilities, but then you're skipping the rest of the abilities because you worry about those couple of abilities that you don't have. And then you're sitting there wondering, what's going on? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that 3 weeks later? So do what you can. The most important thing that you have is you. You've got arms, you've got legs. If your left arm doesn't work and your right arm does, let the right arm lift the left arm. There's so much more that you can do than what you can't do. And if you don't believe me, go home tonight and get 2 pieces of paper and write what you can't do on the left side, and on the right piece of paper, write what you can do. And then get another piece of paper and keep writing, and another piece of paper and keep writing. And then that list of things that you can't do, take it and throw it away because it's meaningless, because you can't do it. So focus on all the stuff that you can do. It's pretty simple, isn't it? It's easy. It sounds like it's easier said than done, but I've been there. I've been in a wheelchair. I've been unable to see and unable to talk. And all I could do was think. And all I could think about is, wow, had I only done this, and if I can do this tomorrow, and what am I going to do in 10 minutes, and where am I going to be next week? I was thinking about all the stuff that, had I done this yesterday, would I be here today? Well, guess what? You know what time it is right now? It's now. It's always going to be now. So if you think about it that way, right now is the time to change your future. You can change the future. You can make it different by doing different activities that you do, and remember what the things are that you like. How many of you go outside and play right now? I hope more people start doing that, and maybe not in this heat, but there's cooler times of the day. But we're all kids at heart. If life was that easy, right? We had no responsibilities. Our only responsibilities were to be home for dinner, really, and go to school. But in between that time, we're playing. We can still play. You can change that word of exercise to play, and it might be a little bit more feasible to do. But just because someone says you should exercise doesn't mean you should climb into a hole and say, not me. What do you mean I should exercise? Exercise. Go and doing something. Throw in a ball. If you go throw a ball as far as you can and then go get it. And guess what? Pick it up and throw it again and go get it. Before you know it, you've gone a pretty long way. But sometimes you need to do stuff like that. Now, I took this picture and put it on my presentation because I love avocados, and this avocado looks as good as any I've ever seen in my life. How many people in here like avocado? It's very healthy, but you can't only eat avocado because avocado is high in fat. It's good fat, but you take the best fat in the world and you get a teaspoon of it, it's got the same amount of calories as a teaspoon of lard. So fat is fat. If you're trying to lose weight, don't try to lose weight by eating more good fats. Eat more good fats, but don't only eat fats because they do store as fat. Olive oil, uncooked, raw olive oil, or all the different omega oils. Those are all good for you, but in moderation too. That's a very colorful group of foods that I had to put in here because I like colorful foods. How many people in here like colorful foods? And this salmon is great. If I were you, I would check to see where the salmon comes from because farm-raised salmon's not as good as the wild salmon because it's farm-raised and it's not in a natural environment and it's higher in mercury and other toxins, and they actually feed it the omegas, so who knows. We do know that it's not as healthy for you as the wild-caught salmon. It's pretty simple. I mean, it's like a synthetic versus a real, but it's not synthetic. So when in doubt, don't rely on Dr. Google, okay? There's no laws for Dr. Google. Dr. Google can say anything he wants, and he can put anything in there that he wants, and if you read it, it's like getting facts off of Facebook. How many people here use Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, that kind of stuff? I'm notorious for responding to people's posts by saying, source, please. Because just because it's put on the internet doesn't mean it's real. And if you don't pass this to 20 people, your sports team's not going to lose the Super Bowl. It's not; those things don't happen. It's the same thing. How many people get those messages where if you got to pass this on to 20 people or something terrible is going to happen? And what if someone up in some mountain across the country didn't do it? Is it going to harm you? No, it's not going to harm you. Dr. Google is scary. Dr. Google is like Dr. Hyde. So the vitamin and mineral conspiracy. All right, how many people in here take vitamins? Okay, why? Because what?
Absorption. They're good for you to make sure that you got that you got what you need.
Okay. Not all of them. Not A, D, E, and K. A, D, E, and K get stored. They're fat soluble. But
because Google says.
Google says take your vitamins, and they also tell you where to buy them. To be the best patient you can be, you have to be informed. And when it comes to diet, and especially vitamins and minerals and supplementing them, the best way to do it is to get your blood checked, to talk to your doctors, to find out what levels are high, what levels are low, what you need to cut back on. The best source of vitamins and minerals come from food. So if you're not getting the right vitamins and minerals from the food and your blood test shows that you're low in vitamin D, which is obviously something that I think every doctor that treats MS would agree on, that vitamin D is important. Now, we don't know exactly how important it is, but we know it's very important. It's something that's across the board. We see low levels of vitamin D, and your physician, I'm sure, has told you that they want you either taking a supplement or they want to look at your levels, and that's why you don't take a supplement. I personally take vitamin D. My level's up to 74 right now. I'm happy with it there. You know why? Because my doctor said that's good. I know that the recommended amount for your levels in your system is between 30 and 100, but having an autoimmune disease should elevate that vitamin D level. Now, what happens is if you don't check your vitamin levels and you are taking vitamins just to take them, you may be doing yourself harm even. Or you might have some really expensive urine, because the water-soluble vitamins will go right through you, and that's where they end up, is in the toilet. So that's what you're doing with your money. So be informed. Talk to your doctor. Get your levels. If your physician's not getting your vitamin levels checked, ask them to. They're your levels. You have the right to get them, and if your insurance doesn't cover them, talk to your insurance. I'm sure your doctor can help you out with that. But it's really important to find out what you need and what you don't need before you go out and waste your money. And you know, the B vitamins, especially B12, it can mimic a lot of the symptoms, the deficiency of MS. I mean, it's basically very, very, very close to it. It's not going to fix your MS, but if you have a vitamin level that's off and you correct it, you know, you're getting back to that line where you want to walk, where everything's going to be a little bit better. And I'm just going to show you this slide. I'm not going to go through it completely because I can do the whole presentation just on this slide alone, as I could with the food label. But this is just a quick group of vitamins and what they do for you and what the best sources are. Look it up. Look up, and if you look it up, don't just Google it. Go to the either USDA or National Institute of Health, NIH.org or gov, and check out what the vitamin levels are. And you could probably even find out different vitamin levels that you need for different illnesses. Now here's something that is how unfortunately how our society works, right? You got a treadmill in the back and you got a bunch of people that want their breasts a little bit more developed. But that's unfortunate because surgery doesn't fix everything. Surgery fixes what you can't fix on your own and haven't given the effort to do. And it does take a lot of effort to have a good diet and to maintain a diet. It takes good effort, and then it becomes a habit, and make sure the foods are at least the ones you like. Don't force yourself to eat them. And I said this already before, energy is food. Now, if you're wondering why you're putting weight on and you're eating healthy and then you find yourself having a few drinks at night, the amount of calories per gram in alcohol is very close to fat. So if you have 6 drinks at night and you can have 3, remember that the next 3 is like having just a few scoops of lard. That might help you out a little bit. Smaller cups, that helps too. If you like drinking wine, drink it in a champagne glass. Then you can say, I had 4 glasses of wine, and I'm still standing. But no, you can trick yourself into doing things like that. Smaller plates at home for smaller portions. It works out. Just you got to keep up with it and not have 6 plates that are small, or else you're really losing out. Plan. This is the most important part when it comes to dieting. If you planned what you were going to eat on Sunday for the entire week, wouldn't you be pretty set? Monday I'm going to have this, Tuesday I'm going to have that, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack in between. You prepare it. If you go to work, you bring it with you. Then you're not going to stray off of what you're doing. And if you can follow that, it goes for anything. If you have a job, you have to plan, or what? You're out. You know, if you like sports, you want to have a plan if you're on a team, so your team will win. The people who are not planning are the people who are not enjoying themselves because they're losing. So I already said what, when, how much, and why. The why comes into play. Now, what I still do is when I have somebody give me a food journal, 3 days. 3 days. I don't care if it's a midnight snack, whatever the food is. I don't just want to know the portion, the type of food. I want to know how they were feeling when they ate it. Because there's an emotional part, like I was talking about before. And if you can identify emotions and the types of foods you're eating, you're ahead of the game. Because then you could say, okay, I'm feeling this way. I'm going to stay away from that ice cream or whatever the food is that you want to go to. But it's so important to correlate the foods and the emotions that you're feeling. Make lists. Make sure that that you stick with stuff that you like and that's healthy. They have to to cross. The unhealthy foods you may have as a reward, but I don't truly believe in having food as a reward. Don't reward yourself with something that you shouldn't be doing. It doesn't make sense. So reward yourself with something else. I love this one because people want the quick fix. There is no quick fix. Just keep pressing that button. Keep pressing that button, you'll burn calories. Now, I lived this. This was me. Right now, as I stand here, I'm the lightest that I've been since I was probably 12 or 13 years old. I was 100 pounds bigger than I am. I wasn't necessarily obese, unless you check my BMI. But I was a big guy. I was always told, get bigger, get stronger. And I did. I got bigger and I got stronger. And then one day, I woke up and I didn't have to get bigger and stronger because I wasn't playing football anymore. But I still kept getting bigger and I was still going to the gym, and it just kept going and going. And eventually I realized I don't need to be big anymore. And when I was diagnosed, I really didn't need to be big anymore. So I was as much as 265. And I'll tell you, it's you're a lot quicker when you're smaller. And orthopedically, it's very helpful, especially if you have changes in your gait and all that stuff. Now you're pounding all this extra weight in your joints. You're going to wonder, is the knee hurting because of MS? Well, MS and the extra 100 pounds aren't helping. And the way I lost the weight was very slow. I had fun with it. I mean, I didn't weigh myself for about 3 months. And then I'd weigh myself and say, oh my gosh, I lost 15, 20 pounds. And I kept my body fat percentage right, and I had a belt. And if you have a belt, you can see how much further you can pull the belt. And that's the true way to tell if the weight's being lost correctly. If this is getting smaller, if your clothes start getting bigger on you, you're doing it right. And that's a very, very, very good goal to have when it comes to weight loss, is fitting into a pair of clothes that you used to fit into, rather than look at the scale. The scale can be scary. And if you do weigh yourself and you want to be lighter, weigh yourself first thing in the morning after you go to the bathroom before you eat. And if you wonder why you always weigh more than when you're at the doctor than when you're weighing yourself at home, it's probably you got a lot more clothes on, you've eaten a few times, and you like to make yourself feel better when you weigh yourself at home, so you pick the perfect time. But if you weigh yourself and you're keeping track of your weight, do it at the same time every time you weigh yourself. Now, this is what I was talking about before. We're all in the same boat here. We were all kids. We all had a good eating habits, hopefully. We were taught the right way to eat, the right amount to eat, and the right frequency to eat. So carry on with that. Go back to eating that way. You skip breakfast, you're going to be irritated. You're not going to be fun to be around. You're going to eat too much for lunch. You're going to get heavy. You're not going to be pleasant, and you're going to be upset that you did it. It's pretty simple when you think about it that way, right? Well, do it. The same thing goes with exercise. I mean, my talks on exercise are basically the same thing. You're able to do it. Even if you think you can't, you might be able to find a way to do something. Do it a little bit better and a little bit better, and before you know it, you're going to be doing the things that you couldn't do before. Same thing goes for eating. After eating well for a long time, it might become a habit. It might be just the way you eat from now on. And that would be the best case scenario, because when you go to the doctor, you can say, all right, I'm here for my neurologist and I want to talk about MS, and I don't have any other comorbidities. Comorbidities are the things that you have in addition to MS that are treated by other physicians, but your doctor has to know about them because now you're taking different medications, and it might be stress, putting more stress on your body and more stress in the mind. I mean, how much more stressful is it to think about, on top of thinking about your MS, because MS could be very stressful. I mean, it's the monkey that's on my back at all times. I always know in the back of my head that I have MS. But I don't want to be thinking about having diabetes too, and having being obese, and having problems, and this and that and the other, and then I'm taking 10 different medicines, and half of them are to combat the other med. And that's not what you want. You want to go to your doctor, and you want to get the most out of the appointment, and you want to know what he feels about your MS, and you want to get every second out of that appointment, and be prepared when you go to it. So never give up, no matter what. It's not an option. If you ever think it's an option, talk to me. I'll give you other options. There's other things you can't give up. So thank you guys very much. I'm so happy that I had your attention while you were eating, and I was talking about nutrition, and I don't know what the food was, but I hope it was healthy. Any questions? We got one back.
Does anybody have any questions for Jeff?
Back.
Yes, I'd like to know more about how to read labels, the percentage and the different subcategories. If you could go over that slide a little bit more in depth, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I was telling you before, so I could spend a whole hour on that. So is there any part of it that you want to know in particular that I can help you with? What part of the food label are you having concerns or questions about?
The serving size and the portion. How many calories is that really? Does that food product really consist of?
Well, are you talking about? It says it right on there. You see where it says?
You can read that?
250 calories, and then it has the calories from fat. So the portion size. There's 2 portions in that container. So basically you split it in half, and that's going to be what's in the food. That's the calories per half of that container, or what it makes. And then it shows you what macronutrients are in it, meaning carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So if you eat the whole container and it says 2 servings, you've eaten twice as much as what you thought it said in the label. Next question.
Should your biggest meal be at lunchtime?
That depends on you. Personally, I eat for the amount of energy that I'm going to use. It's not always that easy, but that's what I do. If I know I'm going to have a lot of stuff to do that day, I'm going to keep myself, nourished. I'm going to have stuff like trail mix, stuff that digests a little bit slower and gives nutrients over a longer period of time. But to have a big lunch, that depends how late you're going to stay up. I personally have a huge breakfast because that's going to get me going for the day.
And what do you recommend for snacks?
Snacks, something healthy and a variety of foods. If you have something with a little bit of each of the food groups in it. People think I'm crazy when I say have vegetables as a snack. Eat vegetables. Every meal, even snacks, the best case scenario is to have a little bit of everything in that snack. Fruit, vegetable, fat, protein, carbohydrate, you're good to go. You've had your snack. That's why trail mix is good, because it has most of that in it.
Any other questions?
Can you get into what the superfoods are? I've been hearing a lot about
Superfoods?
Yeah. Like
I'd rather not
almonds
go
and
there.
kale. Is it real?
No, I mean, I juice. I make smoothies sometimes I have 3 meals of smoothies. Sometimes each smoothie is 1,000 calories with the superfoods, with all the high micronutrients in them. That's what it basically is the foods that are higher in the micronutrients, the vitamins, the minerals. But they're important. They're important to have as part of your diet. Spinach. But don't have too much spinach and kale. Yeah, remember, everything in moderation. You have too much spinach and kale, you end up having a lot of clotting factors. If you have a problem with blood clots and that type of stuff, your doctor would probably tell you to stay away from the green leafy vegetables. In all other cases, you'd want to have more green leafy vegetables, but you have to figure out what's best for you.
What about coconut oil? Have you had any positive?
Coconut oil?
Mm-hmm.
I put 2 teaspoons of coconut oil in my food throughout the day, whether it's usually my smoothies. The research is coming in on it, and what it's showing, I don't know how conclusive it is yet, but that it may help with reduction of atrophy in your brain as you age, which means better memory the older you get. But the jury's still out. I think it's a good form of fat, but it is a saturated fat. It's just it metabolizes a little bit differently than the saturated fats you're used to having. But at room temperature, it's solid.
Now, I'm sorry, one more question. Everything I've been reading is that you're supposed to eat more of the good fats because it helps burn fat. And you're saying it's in moderation, but everything I keep reading is that to keep eating more like avocados and butter and coconut oil and all those good fats.
That's as far as the food exchange system goes. You want to have that stuff in exchange for some of the worst of the fats, but not in abundance. You don't want to have too much fats.
But everything I keep reading, I mean, I understand just where you're coming from.
Where are you reading it?
Like in some of these, I go to Nutrition Smart here locally in Tampa, and a lot of these magazines are encouraging you to eat more fats to burn fat.
I've never heard to eat more fat to burn fat.
That's some of these
Maybe
articles
if you eat
I'm
it
reading.
And it's really heavy and you're burning it while you're eating it, but no, fat's the last thing to burn. Fat's slow to burn, and it's hard to get off once it's stored. And fat, when you eat fat, it stays as fat in your body, so it's not like a protein or a carbohydrate that if you don't burn it turns to fat. It's fat already. So just don't eat too much fat.
There's a couple things. She might be talking about the ketone diet, I'm just assuming. But I was looking in the paleo diet. I know you said diets are bad, but as a lifestyle change, what is your thoughts on that?
I'll tell you, there's one thing that's in common with almost every diet out there. Atkins, ketone diet, South Beach, paleo. If it's for weight loss, the outcome is your fat is restricting calories. Calorie restriction.
It's actually it's a lifestyle change. It's in the belief that you need to eat scavenger kind of foods like how we
I
did
understand.
bears.
I know what it is. But what happens is if you have more fats and less carbohydrates, your body can end up producing more ammonia, and you stay full longer, so you don't eat as much. And when it's all boils down, you look at the total calories you've eaten, and it's reduced. So whatever it takes, just don't label it and don't make it a lifestyle. That's the best way to go when it comes to it. All right.
Any others? Any more questions? Well, let's thank Jeff for making it all the way up from South Florida.
Thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate that.